Hello everyone. This is James from the Rhyl People's Assembly, and I'm here to talk about the budget, the pre-Brexit budget. This video starts a new sort of series of sort of videos and media output from the Rhyl People's Assembly. Up until now, you will have noticed that it's mostly campaign material, and we'll still put up campaign material, but also from now on we'll be doing discussions and basically what our thoughts are on the sort of topics in the news really that are relevant to austerity, which is what we're about. The People's Assembly against austerity. So yeah, the budget, very important budget. This one, like I say, is the pre-Brexit budget, which is supposed to happen next March 2019. Of course, the tagline from the Tories which was carried on over from their conference in September, is that it's the end of austerity. Theresa May said, and of course they've tried to back this up in the headlines with the budget. Of course, anyone who's got a passing interest or takes any sort of look at what was actually announced in the budget can clearly knock that nonsense down. It's not the end of austerity at all. That was just it was a lie, basically. Theresa May's very free and happy to lie to the British public. I mean, do you remember Grenfell? Remember a promise that everyone that was made homeless in Grenfell will be rehoused within, was it 3 weeks or something like that? I mean, I think it's up. I mean, that was 2017, well over a year ago. I believe only up until recently, were the majority found permanent housing that was suitable for them. I don't even know if they've all been found suitable. So she's very happy to lie to you and me, because who's picking her up on it? This is the flip side of the coin, is that the mainstream media aren't doing their job and calling her out on the fact that she's lying constantly to us. And the same thing's happened here with the supposed end of austerity, and the evidence for that in the budget. So what was in the budget? Basically, so I can get a bit straight off my here. What was the budget basically talked about? The headlines were 1.7 billion for people on universal credit to make it more comfortable for them. Very strange. I still find that strange. Sort of not any terminology, but I find it strange that they're putting in 1.7 billion to make it more comfortable for people. Yet according to them, there's no issue with universal credit. So why are they putting the money in if they think there's no issue with it? They're helping people back into work according to them. But there we are. And of course, the bigger headline was that don't forget now, this is supposed to be over the next sort of 4 or 5 years. So this is supposed to be from now until the next general election date in 2022 and a bit beyond. So it's a forecast. It's a forecast of borrowing. It's a forecast of spending. The biggest headline was it 13? I can't quite remember. I think it was 13 billion or something, or more than that maybe actually, to the NHS in England mostly. And this is all because they think they've got a windfall, or they claim they've got a windfall, because in this budget, the sort of autumn-winter budget, they forecast they're going to have to borrow less than they'd forecast they'd have to borrow at the beginning of the year, in the budget at the beginning of the year. So I think they thought at the beginning of the year they'd have to borrow £35 billion or something, to see us through the next 5 years. Now they're forecasting that they'll only have to borrow 27, I think it is, something like that. so that effectively they're treating it as a windfall, or calling it a windfall. So, windfall for the NHS, windfall for people on universal credit, and that was, and also they're claiming that they won't be cutting as much as they would have been cutting from some governmental departments, i.e. the austerity end of it, the pure austerity end of it. That actually, according to the Office of Budget Responsibility, it looked into all of this in detail. Offices, but public offices that sort of like the Ministry of Defence, not the Ministry of Defence actually, that's something else, but the Home Office and the NHS and things like that will actually still have a reduction in the money they can spend overall. It's just less of a reduction, basically, supposedly. Now this is all best case scenario if Brexit goes the way they forecast it will go economically. If it doesn't, so this is best case scenario, if it doesn't, all of that gets thrown out the window, and their best case scenario is downgraded. Basically, overall, their best case scenario from the OBR is, Office of Budget Responsibility, is a 1.5% average sort of growth over the next sort of 3-4 years until the next election, which is frankly just the bare minimum that you'd expect or want for national growth. 1.5% is nothing, really. It's really nothing. That's the best after 8 years of austerity. Is their best their best forecast is 1.5% average growth, which sort of belies the problem we're in, the failure that austerity's been. Now, of course, that was their best case scenario. That's what they're cooing about. As I say, the universal credit thing was odd in itself because they claim there's no issue with it, so they're ploughing on with it. They're delaying the second stage sort of rollout, which is basically to transfer people on existing benefits like ESA onto universal credit, which was supposed to start taking place apparently January 2019. Apparently they're now going to postpone that until July 2019, but nothing as far as the mechanism or the way universal credit works is being changed substantially. So the things like being paid monthly rather than fortnightly if you're using on JSA or ESA work credit activity, your rent being paid to you rather than your landlord. So those are the two biggest problems with universal credit, because if you're already in debt from being on benefits before, particularly people who've been transferred over now, who have spent years getting used to paying their bills around fortnightly payments, who are already paying a top up for their housing benefit, but the housing benefit was going straight to their landlord, and now all of a sudden they're going to get it paid directly to them, which means that if you're already in a hole, you're going to have to, what's the term, borrow from Peter to rob Paul, or vice versa. So you're going to end up, more likely at some point in missing housing payments, which is why you don't get kicked out of your flat or home that you've been renting. So that's partly why homelessness is going up as well, for people who've already been on universal credit. We've already seen stories about the increase in suicides, the increase in premature deaths for people who are already ill because of the stress of it all, the 6-week delay, which is an average delay for getting the payment in the first place. So it's very strange that they're saying we'll pump that money into to make it more comfortable for people, but there's no problem. Of course, there was notably, there was nothing about reversing Theresa May's destruction of the police force in England or Wales. Well, crime shot up, basically. So that's still fully in austerity, even their own ambition, because they're not talking about it, there's nothing about it. We're still, of course, going to see the problems with the NHS, waiting for ambulances, not enough doctors, NHS doctors and NHS nurses and staff, hiring agency staff, but of course that costs more to do. Same benefit system that was going to be before. Nothing's really changed. It's under austerity, and it's total. Don't believe any of that. Really, don't believe it's nonsense. Don't believe universal credit's a good idea, but badly implemented. It's not. It's a very bad idea, because why else would the Tories impose it on people? The Tories aren't there to help people. They don't care if you've got no money to live on. You know what I mean? They're almost millionaires to a man in the Tory cabinet. They don't care. They have no idea how people really live, and I suspect they don't like people like you and me at all. They need us to make them money somehow, make their friends money by working 0 hours contracts or short-term contracts or short hours with as little protection in employment as possible. So none of the real life stuff that we all go through has changed. They're all sort of money for the social service crisis that's going on. There was mention of it, but not really. I mean, it's drop in ocean stuff. It's along with it. It's a part of this NHS windfall thing they're talking about. But mental health services completely destroyed. Effectively, completely destroyed in the community. You want to get treated for mental health, it's either talk therapy, if you can find some in your area, and then between talk therapy and getting sectioned at your local hospital because you're demonstrating some sort of violent behaviour or something, or harmful to yourself or other people, there's nothing in between, unless you can pay for it. Obviously, social services people who are severely disabled, their hours of care have been cut and cut and cut and cut. So there's a crisis there. That wasn't really addressed at all. It was supposed to be part of the NHS windfall sort of spend headlines, but no real attempt to sort that out. Housing, where was the money and talk about building social housing, which people are desperate for? I'm a member of the Old People's Assembly, but I'm also a newish local councillor in one of the most deprived wards in Wales. And the number one thing I'm asked about to help people with is housing, because there isn't any, and it's not going to be built. Affordable housing is being built, but that's not helping people that live here already that need my help. So our response to the budget is even at the Chancellor's best forecast, best case scenario, pretty pathetic, to be honest. Partial in the extreme, and it's more than likely that in reality almost all of the big headline sort of announcements are going to have to be either paired post March next year, or completely dropped. We don't. We'll have to see, but it's unlikely it's going to stay as they say. And as I say, overall 1.5% growth. Anyway, over a 4-year period, 5-year period, pathetic. Absolutely pathetic. I'm trying to remember the word that the Office of Budget Responsibility used for that, and it was, what was it? I think it was something like modest, or which is, for big organisations like that, modest means crap, basically. Pathetic. So anyway, what do you think? That's what we think. So tell us what you think. Comment below as you see fit. Subscribe if you like. There'll be many more of these coming up. Don't forget the shine off me glasses from the computer. And yeah, there's going to be, let me think, there's going to be a demo coming up imminently against Universal Credit locally. So we'll be sticking the video up for that. Hopefully, we're going to get a few talking heads from people being affected by it if they'll talk to us. And of course, it's difficult to get people to talk because there's a culture of fear around it, which the government instill in people who are desperate. But then, if you're angry enough, sometimes you will talk. And we've got other events coming up, which I won't announce yet, but some interesting things coming, and more of these types of videos. And definitely will be one coming up on the stuff that's back in the news now about Saudi Arabia, arming Saudi Arabia, and universal credit. These are both topics that we've been protesting against for well over a year, probably near to 2 years, to be honest, on the street, which are back in the news now. So there'll be more on that, and anyway, thanks for listening, and ciao for now.